The judge looked at me like I was already finished, and my ex-husband smiled like he had buried me alive. I remember the way people stared that day, whispering, judging. Lisa built nothing. One of his friends muttered loud enough for me to hear. Mark made her. I didn't say a word. I stood there in that courtroom, hand steady, heart quiet, while the man I once trusted took everything I had spent 20 years building. My company, my name, my life's work. And I let him, not because I was weak, because I knew something they didn't. Mark always loved an audience. That day, he made sure everyone was there, his lawyer, his business partners, even a few former employees. He wanted witnesses. He wanted them to see me fall. When the judge finalized the settlement, Mark leaned back in his chair, satisfied. She can keep the house, he said casually, like he was tossing scraps to a stray dog. I'll take the company. It's where the real value is anyway. The room chuckled softly. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my face still. Because arguing would have ruined everything. Because losing was part of the plan. That night, I sat alone in the empty house. No calls, no messages, just silence. The kind of silence that forces you to hear your own thoughts. I replayed every moment of that courtroom in my mind. Every look, every word. And I smiled, not out of joy, out of certainty. Mark thought he had won because he took what was visible. He didn't understand what actually mattered. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one behind the scenes, the one who fixed problems before anyone even noticed them. Mark was the face of the company. I was its spine. He didn't build that company. He borrowed my strength and called it his. But I let him believe that. Even now, the next few weeks were exactly what everyone expected. I disappeared. No public appearances. No statements. No interviews. People talked. She's broken. She couldn't handle the pressure. She lost everything. I let them think that. Meanwhile, I watched. Mark stepped into his new role like a king who had just claimed his throne. He gave interviews, hosted parties, made big announcements about his vision for the company. I watched every move, every decision, every mistake, because Mark had one fatal flaw. He didn't understand the foundation he was standing on. 3 months later, the cracks started to show. Small at first. A delayed project here, a missed deadline there. Then clients began to pull back. Quietly, then not so quietly. I remember the first time I saw panic in his eyes. It was during a shareholder meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. I sat in the back, unnoticed. He was sweating, stumbling over numbers he didn't understand, answering questions with confidence, but no substance. That's when I knew. It had begun, but I still didn't step in. Not yet, because timing is everything. The truth is, I could have fought him in court. I could have dragged everything into the light. But that would have been messy, loud, emotional, and Mark thrives in chaos. So I chose something different. I chose patience. I chose control. And I chose one person to help me execute it. His name was Daniel. To everyone else, he was just my driver. A quiet man in his early 50s. Always in a simple black suit. Always on time. Mark never noticed him. Never even looked at him twice. That was his biggest mistake. Because Daniel wasn't just a driver. He was the only person who knew the full truth. Every document, every account, every hidden detail Mark had conveniently ignored. Daniel had been there for years, long before the divorce. Watching, listening, learning. He never spoke unless I asked him to. And when I finally did, everything changed. It started with a single question. Are we ready? He looked at me through the rearview mirror. Yes, that was all I needed. The next week, Mark filed a motion in court. He wanted to sell part of the company. Said it was a strategic decision. But I knew what it really was. Desperation. And desperation makes people careless. The hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. Mark walked into that courtroom with the same confidence he had 3 months earlier. Same suit, same smile, same arrogance. But this time, I wasn't alone. I sat quietly as the proceedings began. Mark's lawyer spoke first. Smooth, polished, convincing. They presented numbers, projections, plans. It all sounded impressive. If you didn't know the truth, when it was time for objections, there was a pause, a long one. Then, Daniel stood up. At first, no one reacted. They didn't even recognize him. just a driver stepping forward. Mark frowned. "Excuse me," his lawyer said, slightly irritated. "This is not your place." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I believe it is." The room shifted. Something in his tone made people listen. The judge looked at him carefully. "State your name." "Daniel Reyes." "And your relation to this case?" Daniel glanced at me for half a second, then back at the judge. "I am the financial architect behind the company in question." Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. "This is ridiculous," he said, shaking his head. "He's a driver. My ex-wife's driver." Daniel didn't react. He simply reached into his briefcase and placed a stack of documents on the table. "Then I suggest you review these." The next few minutes felt unreal. Page after page. Account records. Internal reports. Legal structures. All signed. All verified. All pointing to one thing. Me. Every major decision. Every strategy. Every foundation. Built by me. Approved by me. Owned by me. Mark's smile disappeared slowly, like someone turning off a light. This doesn't change anything," he said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. Daniel finally looked at him directly. "It changes everything." Then came the part Mark never saw coming. The clause, hidden deep within the original company agreement. A clause Mark had signed years ago without reading. A clause that protected intellectual ownership. My ownership. The company he took was never fully his to begin with. The judge leaned forward, reviewing the documents carefully. The courtroom was silent again. But this time, it felt different. Not tense. Certain. Mark tried to speak, tried to argue, but every word sounded weaker than the last. Because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs timing. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was calm, clear, final. The court recognizes the validity of these documents and the clause presented. Ownership rights are hereby reassessed. That was it. No drama, no shouting, just a quiet shift, and everything changed. Mark didn't look at me. He couldn't, because for the first time, he saw me, not as the quiet woman who stood beside him, but as the one who built everything he thought he owned. As people began to leave the courtroom, I stood up slowly. Daniel stepped back, returning to his place, like nothing had happened, like he was just a driver again. I walked past Mark without stopping, but just before I reached the door, I paused, not to gloat, not to celebrate, just to say one thing. "You didn't lose today," I said quietly. "You lost the moment you believed I was nothing." Then I walked out. The sun felt different that day. Warmer. Lighter. Not because I had taken something back, but because I had proven something. You don't always have to fight loud to win. Sometimes, you just have to let people underestimate you long enough to reveal who they really are. And when the moment comes, you don't raise your voice. You simply take back what was always yours and walk away without looking back.